The first sign something was wrong came in the form of a receipt, a crumpled piece of paper that fell from Mark's jacket pocket as I was doing laundry one Sunday morning. Tiffany & Co., dated 3 days ago. We'd been married 7 years, and my husband had never once stepped foot in that store, not even for my birthday. I'm Rebecca, and until that moment, I thought I had it all figured out. A thriving business I'd built with Mark from the ground up, a beautiful home in Boston's Back Bay, and what I believed was a rock-solid marriage. Funny how one small piece of paper can shatter everything you thought you knew. "Hey, babe," I called out, holding the receipt between trembling fingers. "Did you buy something at Tiffany's?" Silence stretched through our townhouse. Then came the sound of his footsteps on the hardwood floors, too measured, too careful. Oh, that. Mark appeared in the doorway, running a hand through his dark hair. "It's a surprise for the company anniversary next month." "Shouldn't have found that." I nodded, but something in his voice felt off. Like hitting a wrong note in a familiar song. "Right. The anniversary." I forced a smile. "Speaking of which, we need to finalize the guest list for the launch party." "About that." Mark checked his phone, a new nervous habit I'd noticed lately. "I have to run to the office. Emergency meeting with investors." "On a Sunday?" "Business doesn't wait, Beck. You know that better than anyone." He grabbed his keys, kissed my cheek, a quick perfunctory peck, and was gone before I could say another word. I stood in our bedroom, still holding that damn receipt, when my phone buzzed. A text from Presley, my best friend since college. "Lunch tomorrow? Need your advice on something important." "Sure," I typed back. "The usual place at 12:30? Three dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. "Perfect, you're the best, Beck." I tried to focus on work that afternoon, reviewing contracts in my home office, but my mind kept drifting to the receipt. Mark's explanation made sense. We were celebrating 5 years since launching our tech company, a milestone worth marking. But something nagged at me, an instinct I couldn't shake. At dinner that night, I watched him push food around his plate, his attention fixed on his phone beneath the table. "Who keeps texting you?" I asked, aiming for casual but hearing the edge in my voice. "Just work stuff. The Singapore deal is getting complicated." I took a sip of wine. "I thought James was handling Singapore." Mark's fork clattered against his plate. "He is. I'm just supervising." Later that night, I couldn't sleep. Mark's soft snores filled our bedroom as I slipped out of bed and down to the kitchen. "A glass of water," I told myself. That's all I needed. His jacket hung over a kitchen chair, the same one from earlier. I stood there, staring at it, hating myself for what I was about to do. But I did it anyway. The pocket held his phone. Locked, of course, but I knew his password. The same one he'd used since we started dating. His college football jersey number. My fingers shook as I typed it in. Nothing happened. I tried again. Still nothing. He'd changed it. A sound escaped me. Something between a laugh and a sob. Mark had never changed his password in all the years I'd known him. Not once. I was about to put the phone back when it vibrated in my hand. A message notification lit up the screen. "Miss you already. Can't wait until tomorrow. PP." My mind raced through our contacts, our friends, our employees. P could be anyone. But deep down, I knew. I knew before I heard Mark's voice from the doorway, making me jump so violently I almost dropped the phone. "What are you doing?" I turned slowly, his phone still clutched in my hand. "Who's P?" "Give me my phone, Rebecca." His voice was cold, controlled. Nothing like the man who'd promised to love me forever. "Who is P, Mark?" He crossed the kitchen in 3 steps and snatched the phone from my grip. "You're being paranoid. Go to bed." But as he turned away, I caught it. The flash of guilt in his eyes. The same look he'd given me when he lied about the receipt. I stood alone in our dark kitchen, my heart pounding against my ribs. Tomorrow I'd have lunch with Presley, my best friend. P. And suddenly, with crushing clarity, I knew exactly what kind of advice she needed. I arrived at the restaurant 15 minutes early, my stomach in knots. The hostess led me to our usual corner table, the one where Presley and I had shared countless lunches, secrets, and dreams over the years. Today would be different. Water for now, I told the server, my throat dry as sandpaper. When Presley walked in, I knew. The way she carried herself, the nervous energy radiating off her, and most tellingly, the way she unconsciously touched her stomach as she sat down. "Rebecca," she started, her voice trembling. "I need to tell you something. You're pregnant." The words came out flat, emotionless. Her eyes widened. "How did you—" "And it's Mark's." The color drained from her face. She reached for her water glass, nearly knocking it over. "We never meant for this to happen." I laughed, a harsh sound that made nearby diners turn their heads. "Really? You never meant to sleep with my husband? It just happened." "Multiple times, apparently." "Please, let me explain." "How long?" Presley looked down at her hands. 8 months. 8 months. While I was working late nights to launch our new product line, while I was planning our anniversary celebration, while I was trying to figure out why my husband had grown so distant. "We fell in love," she whispered. The server approached our table, smile bright. "Are you ready to order?" "They're leaving," I said, not taking my eyes off Presley. Once we were outside, she grabbed my arm. "Rebecca, please, you and Mark, you've been growing apart. And you know how much you both wanted children." I jerked away from her touch. Don't you dare use that against me." He told me about the fertility treatments. How you couldn't— "I never had fertility treatments." I cut her off. "Mark and I agreed to wait until the company was stable." "He told you I couldn't have children?" Presley's face crumpled. He said you'd been trying for years." "Well, he's a better liar than I gave him credit for." I turned to leave, but her next words stopped me cold. "We're getting married. As soon as the divorce is final." My world tilted sideways. I steadied myself against a parking meter, memories flooding back. The Tiffany receipt, the late nights, the changed phone password. "Does he know you're telling me this?" "He's telling you tonight. We thought it would be better coming from me first." I straightened up, smoothed my blazer. "Congratulations. I hope you're both very happy." "Rebecca, one more thing," I said, turning back. "The company, what are your plans for that?" Presley shifted uncomfortably. "Mark says it's complicated, but he thinks it's best if you step back. For everyone's sake." Step back. From the company I had built with my savings, my sweat, my endless hours. The company whose original contract sat in my home office safe, its terms crystal clear about what happened in case of divorce or betrayal. Mark was waiting when I got home, sitting in our living room like a man at his own funeral. "I assume Presley told you," he said, "that you're leaving me for my best friend? That you lied about me being infertile to justify your affair? That you want to push me out of my own company?" I remained standing, my hand gripping the doorframe. "Did I miss anything?" "The company is as much mine as it is yours." "Is that what your lawyer told you?" He frowned. "What's that supposed to mean?" "Nothing." I smiled, thinking of the contract in my safe. The one he'd signed without reading carefully, too excited about our future together. "Just wondering if you've reviewed our partnership agreement recently?" "Rebecca, be reasonable. We can handle this like adults." "Like adults?" I laughed. "Is that what adults do? Sleep with their spouse's best friend and lie about fertility issues?" "I never meant to hurt you. Funny how that works out." I headed for the stairs. "I'll be staying at my mother's tonight. Don't worry, I'll have my lawyer contact yours about the divorce." "Rebecca, wait." I paused on the stairs, not looking back. "You know what the worst part is, Mark? I would have given you everything if you'd just been honest. But now?" I finally turned to face him. "Now I'm going to take everything." His face paled as I climbed the stairs to pack my bags, my mind already racing with plans. They thought they had won, thought they had me cornered, but they'd forgotten one crucial detail. I never started a fight I couldn't finish. And this fight was just beginning. You're kidding me. Hazel stared at the contract spread across my mother's dining room table. He actually signed this without reading the fine print? I nodded, taking a sip of the coffee my mother had brought us. Mark always said he trusted me to handle the legal stuff. Guess that trust went both ways, didn't it? Section 7.3 is beautiful, Hazel said, running her finger along the text. In the event of divorce due to infidelity, the betrayed party gains controlling interest of all company assets. She looked up at me. Did your lawyer actually manage to slip this past his? Mark insisted we use the same lawyer to save money. Said we'd never need these clauses anyway. I laughed bitterly. Romantic, right? My phone buzzed. Another message from Mark. I'd been ignoring them for 3 days. He's getting desperate, Hazel noted, glancing at my screen. Have you seen the office gossip? He's been telling everyone you had an emotional breakdown and needed time off. Of course he has. I pulled out my laptop. Show me what you found. Hazel, my assistant and now closest confidant, had been gathering evidence since I'd told her everything. She pulled up a folder of screenshots and emails. They weren't as careful as they thought. Look at these expense reports. Private dinners, weekend business trips to New York, all while you were working late at the office. Using company money for their affair? I shook my head. That's going to look great in court. My mother, Clara, appeared in the doorway, her face concerned. Rebecca, honey, Steve's here to see you. I hadn't seen Steve since college, but I'd reached out to him yesterday. As one of Boston's top PR specialists, I needed his expertise. Beck, he said, walking in. He looked good, better than I remembered. I came as soon as I could. This is quite a situation you've got. That's one way to put it. I gestured for him to sit. How bad is it out there? Mark's been making calls, trying to control the narrative before it breaks, but... He pulled out his tablet. I've got something that might interest you. The video he showed us made my blood run cold. Security footage from our office building showing Mark and Presley in the elevator 2 months ago. The timestamp read 11:47 p.m. Where did you get this? I whispered. I have friends in the building's security team. There's more, lots more, dating back months. Hazel leaned forward. The company anniversary party is in 2 weeks. They're planning to announce their engagement there. Over my dead body, I muttered. Actually, Steve said, a slight smile playing on his lips. That party might be exactly what we need. But first, we need to secure your position. Have you contacted a lawyer yet? Meeting with Christian Ford tomorrow morning. He specializes in contract disputes. Good. Steve nodded. Because once we start this, there's no going back. Are you sure you want to go through with it? I stood up and walked to the window, looking out at my mother's garden. The roses she'd planted after Dad died were in full bloom, their thorns hidden beneath beautiful petals. They thought I would just roll over, I said quietly. That I'd be so devastated by their betrayal that I'd give up everything we built. But they forgot something important. What's that? Hazel asked. I turned back to face them. I'm not just the woman Mark married. I'm the one who wrote every contract, who secured every investor, who turned our startup into a multi-million-dollar company. And I'll be damned if I let them take that from me. Then let's get to work, Steve said, opening his laptop. We've got 2 weeks to prepare your counterattack. As we planned late into the night, my phone kept buzzing with messages. One caught my eye, not from Mark, but from Presley. Please talk to me. We need to work this out like adults. I showed it to Hazel, who snorted. The audacity. Should I respond? I asked. Steve looked up from his laptop. Not yet. Let them sweat. They think they know what's coming, but they have no idea. My mother brought in more coffee, squeezing my shoulder as she passed. Remember what your father always said, sweetheart. The best revenge isn't served cold. It's served when they least expect it. I smiled, thinking of the contract safely stored in my mother's safe, of the evidence mounting on Steve's laptop. of the plan taking shape in my mind. 2 weeks, I said, picking up my coffee. In 2 weeks, they'll learn exactly what happens when you underestimate the woman you betrayed. Hazel raised her cup in a mock toast. To karma. No, I corrected her, a steel edge in my voice. To justice. The company anniversary party transformed our office's entire floor into a showcase of success. Crystal glasses clinked, investors mingled, and my heart thundered against my ribs as I watched Mark work the room. He'd been trying to reach me all week, leaving increasingly desperate voicemails about talking things through. Ready? Steve appeared at my elbow, looking sharp in his dark suit. Born ready. I smoothed down my red dress, the one Mark had always said was too bold for business events. Is everything in place? Christian has the paperwork. Hazel's got the presentation queued up. Just waiting for your signal. I nodded, taking a champagne flute from a passing waiter. Right on cue, Mark clinked his glass, drawing everyone's attention. Presley stood beside him, practically glowing in a cream-colored dress that did nothing to hide her growing bump. Thank you all for coming tonight, Mark began, his charm turned up to full wattage. 5 years ago, we had a dream. I tuned out his speech, the same one he'd given at countless investor meetings. Instead, I watched faces in the crowd, noting who looked uncomfortable, who couldn't meet my eyes. And now, Mark continued, reaching for Presley's hand, I have another announcement to make, one that marks not just a new chapter for our company, but for my personal life as well. The room grew quiet. Too quiet. As some of you may have heard, Rebecca and I are going through some changes. That's one way to put it. My voice cut through the silence. All heads turned toward me. Mark's smile faltered. Rebecca, maybe we should discuss this privately. Why? I moved to the center of the room. Isn't this the perfect time to discuss changes? After all, this company was built on transparency. Wasn't it, Mark? Presley stepped forward. Rebecca, please don't make a scene. A scene? I laughed, the sound echoing off the windows. Like the scene you two made in the office elevator 2 months ago? The security footage was quite illuminating. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Mark's face went white. While my husband and best friend were having their affair, I continued, my voice steady. I was here, working, building, making sure we delivered on every promise to every person in this room. That's enough, Mark snapped. Oh, I'm just getting started. I nodded to Hazel, who dimmed the lights, the presentation screen lowered behind me. Let's talk about company expenses, shall we? Images flashed across the screen. Hotel receipts, dinner bills, weekend getaways, all charged to the company account. Rebecca, Mark warned, you're making a huge mistake. No, your huge mistake was assuming I'd just disappear quietly. I turned to address the crowd. What you're seeing is evidence of systematic misuse of company funds for personal expenses, but that's not even the best part. Christian stepped forward, holding a folder. Mr. Ellis, as your wife's legal counsel, I'm serving you with these documents. Mark snatched the folder, his hands shaking as he read. This is ridiculous. You can't… Section 7.3, I interrupted. Read it carefully this time. The color drained from his face as understanding dawned. Behind him, Presley grabbed his arm, whispering urgently in his ear. As of this moment, I announced to the stunned room, I am exercising my contractual right to assume controlling interest of this company. Mr. Ellis's position as CEO is terminated, effective immediately. You can't do this, Presley cried out. We're having a baby. Congratulations. I smiled coldly. I suggest you start looking for a new source of income. Those designer maternity clothes don't pay for themselves. Security appeared at the doors, another detail Steve had arranged. Mark looked around wildly, realizing he was cornered. This isn't over, he growled. Actually, it is. I raised my glass. To new beginnings, and to karma, the room erupted in chaos as security escorted Mark and Presley out. Investors huddled in corners, whispering frantically. but I remained standing in the center, my head high. Steve appeared beside me. You okay? Never better. I watched as Hazel distributed prepared statements to key stakeholders. Though something tells me tomorrow's board meeting will be interesting. You've got the contract on your side, he reminded me. And after that presentation, no one's going to back Mark. My phone buzzed. A text from my mother. Your father would be so proud. I blinked back tears, grateful for the dim lighting. Ms. Rebecca? A young intern approached nervously. There's a reporter from the Globe asking for comment. I exchanged looks with Steve, who nodded slightly. Tell them I'll give an exclusive interview tomorrow. I straightened my shoulders. After all, every good revenge story needs an epilogue. The night wasn't over, but the hardest part was done. I'd taken back what was mine. Now I just had to keep it. He's filing an injunction. Christian spread the legal documents across his desk. Claims you coerced him into signing the original contract under false pretenses. I leaned back in my chair, exhausted after a sleepless night. Of course he is. There's more. Christian pulled out another document. Presley's lawyer contacted me. They're claiming emotional distress and workplace harassment. Harassment? I almost laughed. That's rich coming from them. They're desperate, Steve said from his corner of the office. The Globe interview this morning hit hard. Stock's already down 12%. My phone buzzed. Another message from Mark. I opened it this time. You've made your point. Let's talk. For the sake of the baby. Still playing the baby card. I muttered, showing the message to Steve. Don't respond, Christian advised. Everything goes through me now. But Rebecca, there's something else you should see. He slid a manila envelope across his desk. Inside were photos, dozens of them. Mark and Presley at restaurants, hotels, even walking on the beach. The timestamps went back almost a year. Where did these come from? Anonymous delivery this morning, but look at this one. The photo showed Mark handing something to a man I didn't recognize, both looking furtive outside a coffee shop. That's Daniel Ross, Christian said. He's a known corporate spy. My stomach dropped. Are you saying? We need to audit everything. Steve cut in. If Mark was selling company secrets while planning his exit? He wouldn't, I whispered. But even as I said it, memories surfaced. Missing files, mysterious meetings, projects that suddenly stalled. My phone rang. Hazel, you need to see this, she said without preamble. Someone leaked emails between Mark and Presley to social media. They're explicit, and they discuss company information. I put her on speaker as she forwarded the emails. The room fell silent as we read through them. Well, Steve finally said, looks like they did our job for us. This changes everything, Christian added. If he was sharing confidential information with an unauthorized party, he was setting me up, I realized. The whole time he was planning to push me out. Presley was just a bonus. Rebecca, Christian leaned forward. We need to talk about what happens next. This isn't just about divorce anymore. We're looking at potential corporate espionage. My phone buzzed again, this time from an unknown number. A video link. With trembling fingers, I pressed play. It was Presley, sitting in what looked like a hotel room. Rebecca, please, you have to stop this. Mark, he's not who you think he is. He told me things, promised me things, but now... She broke down crying. I'm scared. The baby... The video cut off abruptly. Track that number, Steve ordered, already on his phone. She's playing us, I said, but uncertainty crept in. Right? Christian gathered the photos. Maybe, maybe not. But we can use this. If Presley's willing to turn on Mark... Got it, Steve announced. The video came from the Marriott downtown, room 842. I stood up. I'm going. Rebecca, wait. Christian started. No, I need to hear what she has to say. Face to face. Steve grabbed his jacket. I'm coming with you. The drive to the hotel was tense. Security cameras caught us entering, riding the elevator, walking down the hall. Everything documented, just in case. I knocked on room 842. Presley opened the door, her face tear-stained. She looked terrible, nothing like the triumphant woman from the party. "Thank God you came," she whispered. I didn't know who else to trust. Trust? I laughed harshly. That's an interesting choice of word. You don't understand. She glanced nervously at Steve. He's been planning this for months. The affair, the baby. It was all part of his plan to take control of the company. And you went along with it. He said he loved me. Her voice cracked. But last night after the party, he changed. Started talking about leaving the country, about accounts I didn't know existed. Steve stepped forward. "Ms. Presley, are you saying you have evidence of financial misconduct?" She nodded, pulling out a USB drive. "Everything's here. Account numbers, meetings, contacts. I was supposed to be his wife, but I think I was just another pawn." I stared at the drive, remembering all the times Mark had said he trusted me with the legal stuff. All the times he'd let me handle the contracts while he handled the relationships. "Why should I believe you?" Presley's hand went to her stomach. "Because this baby deserves better than a father who treats people like chess pieces. And because..." She took a shaky breath. "I'm starting to think I might not be the first person he's done this to. The implications hit me like a physical blow. How many others had there been? How long had he been playing this game?" "Okay," I said, taking the drive. "Start from the beginning. Tell me everything." Behind me, Steve was already calling Christian. The game had changed again, but this time I wasn't the only one who'd been played. 3 companies. Hazel's voice shook as she presented her findings to the emergency board meeting. Mark did this 3 times before. Small tech startups, all with female founders, all ended in divorces and corporate takeovers. The boardroom erupted in murmurs. I sat at the head of the table, my hands clenched under the surface to stop their trembling. "The pattern is identical," Christian added, standing to address the room. "He marries into the company, orchestrates personal drama to destabilize the leadership, then uses the chaos to seize control of assets." "And the other women?" asked Janet, our longest-serving board member. "All signed NDAs as part of their settlements." Steve clicked to the next slide. "But we found something interesting about those settlements. The money came from offshore accounts, not the companies themselves. Which means," I cut in, "he's been building a network. Each takeover funded the next one." The door burst open. Mark strode in, flanked by 2 men in suits. "This meeting is illegal. I'm still CEO." "Actually," Christian interrupted, "you're not, and you're trespassing." "Where's Presley?" Mark demanded, his eyes finding mine. "What did you do to her?" "Funny you should ask." I nodded to Steve, who opened the side door. Presley walked in, followed by 3 women I'd never met in person. But I knew their faces from the files on the USB drive. "Hello, Mark," said the first woman. "Remember me? Sarah from Meditech?" Mark's face went pale. "This is ridiculous. You can't..." "Rachel from Innovate Now." The second woman cut in. "You know, the company you stripped from me 2 years ago?" "And Maria," said the third, "from that failed startup you buried in legal fees until I had no choice but to sell." Mark backed toward the door, but security blocked his exit. "Whatever they told you, it's lies. They're bitter ex-wives." "Ex-victims," Presley corrected. "And I'm done being your latest one." "The FBI is very interested in those offshore accounts," Christian added. "Wire fraud across state lines is a federal offense." "You're bluffing," Mark snarled, but sweat beaded on his forehead. I stood up slowly. "Remember what you told me when we started this company? Trust is everything in business." "Funny how right you were." "Rebecca, please." His voice cracked. "We can work this out, for old time's sake." "Old times?" Sarah stepped forward. "Like when you told me I was imagining things? That I was paranoid?" "Or when you convinced everyone I was having a mental breakdown?" Rachel added. "Or when you used my own best friend against me." I finished. The boardroom doors opened again. Two FBI agents entered, badges displayed. "Mr. Ellis," one said, "we need you to come with us." What followed was chaos. Mark tried to run but didn't make it 2 steps. His lawyers started spouting legal terms. The board members watched in shocked silence as federal agents led their former CEO away in handcuffs. "The press is already gathering downstairs," Steve murmured in my ear. I turned to the 3 women, my unexpected allies. "Thank you for coming forward." "Thank you for being smarter than we were," Maria replied, "and for stopping him before he could do this again." Presley stood awkwardly to the side, one hand protectively over her stomach. "Rebecca, Save it." I held up a hand. "You still betrayed me, but helping stop him, it's a start." "The company's stock will take a hit," Janet warned, gathering her papers. "Let it," I said. "We'll rebuild. Honestly this time." As the room cleared out, Steve touched my arm. "You okay?" I looked around the boardroom, where just months ago Mark and I had celebrated landing our biggest contract, where we'd shared dreams and plans and what I thought was love. "You know what the worst part is?" I said quietly. "A part of me still loves who I thought he was. The man who believed in this company, in me. But that man never existed, did he?" "No," Steve agreed. "But you exist. The company exists. And now you can run it your way." My phone buzzed. A text from my mother. "Coming over with wine and pizza. No arguments." I smiled despite everything. "The press is waiting for a statement. So let's give them one." Steve straightened my jacket collar. "Show them what real leadership looks like." We walked to the elevator together, and I caught my reflection in the metal doors. I looked different somehow. Stronger, maybe, or just wiser. "Ready?" Steve asked as the elevator descended. "Actually," I said, surprising myself, "I am." Because sometimes the best revenge isn't about getting even. Sometimes it's about getting free. And as those elevator doors opened to face the waiting cameras, I knew that's exactly what I'd done. The courthouse buzzed with tension as I took the witness stand. 3 months had passed since Mark's arrest, but this moment, testifying at his fraud trial, felt surreal. "Please state your name for the record," the prosecutor began. "Rebecca Freeman." "And your relationship to the defendant?" "Soon-to-be ex-wife and CEO of the company he tried to steal." Mark sat at the defense table, wearing an ill-fitting suit that made him look smaller somehow. Our eyes met briefly before he looked away. "Ms. Freeman, when did you first suspect fraudulent activity?" I leaned toward the microphone. I didn't. Not until I discovered his infidelity. He was careful, methodical. Each suspicious transaction had a plausible explanation. The prosecutor displayed financial records on the courtroom screens. "Can you explain these transfers?" "Those were supposedly for international expansion, but as we now know, the money went to shell companies Mark controlled." From my peripheral vision, I saw Presley enter the courtroom, her pregnancy now clearly visible. She'd agreed to testify tomorrow, part of her plea deal. "And these emails?" The prosecutor pulled up the correspondence between Mark and Daniel Ross. "That's when he sold our proprietary software designs to competitors, while I was working late trying to protect those very designs." Mark's lawyer stood. "Objection, speculation." "Sustained." The judge ruled. The questioning continued for hours. Every detail laid bare: the fake investors, the manipulated books, the pattern of deception that had fooled not just me, but 3 other women before me. During a recess, Steve found me in the hallway. "You're doing great." "I feel like I'm going to throw up." "That's normal." He handed me a water bottle. "Sarah just finished her testimony. She was incredible." "How's the press coverage?" "Supportive. Your mother's been handling reporters like a pro." I smiled, remembering how Clara had faced down a particularly aggressive journalist last week. "She's always been a force of nature." "Rebecca." A familiar voice made me turn. Presley stood there, looking uncertain. "Can we talk?" Steve squeezed my arm and stepped away, giving us privacy. "The baby's a girl," she said softly. I'm naming her Hope. Fitting. I'm moving to Seattle after the trial. My sister lives there. I want her to have a fresh start. I nodded, unsure what she wanted from me. I'm sorry, she blurted out. Not just for the affair, but for not seeing him for what he was. For not being a better friend. You know what hurts the most? I met her eyes. I would have supported you both if you'd just been honest. I would have given him a divorce. But you chose to help him destroy me instead. I know. Tears spilled down her cheeks. I'll spend the rest of my life trying to make up for that. The bailiff called us back in. As we returned to the courtroom, Mark's lawyer was conferring urgently with his client. Your Honor, the lawyer announced as we settled, my client wishes to change his plea. The room erupted in whispers. Mark stood, his voice barely audible. Guilty. I plead guilty. The judge called for order. To all charges? Yes, Your Honor. Everything after that happened in a blur. The judge's instructions, the prosecutor's statements, the scheduling of sentencing. I sat there, numb, as years of lies finally came to an end. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed. Ms. Freeman, how do you feel about the guilty plea? Will the company survive this scandal? Steve started to shield me, but I stepped forward. Today isn't about the company. It's about justice. Not just for me, but for every person Mark deceived. We trusted him, and he betrayed that trust. But we're stronger for having survived it. Later that night, I sat in my mother's garden, a glass of wine in hand. Sarah, Rachel, and Maria had joined us, along with Hazel and Steve. To new beginnings, Sarah proposed. And to unlikely friendships, Rachel added. You know, Maria said, we should start a support group. Help other women spot the signs. Already working on it, Hazel chimed in. We've had 3 calls this week from women in similar situations. Steve sat beside me. You changed lives today. We all did. I looked around at these people who'd become my unexpected support system. Though I have to admit, I never thought my revenge would end up helping others. The best revenge stories usually do, my mother said, bringing out more wine. Because they're not really about revenge at all. They're about reclaiming your power. As the stars came out and conversation flowed, I felt something I hadn't experienced in months. Peace. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, rebuilding the company, finalizing the divorce, moving forward. But tonight, surrounded by strength and solidarity, I was exactly where I needed to be. And that concludes our first Women in Tech Leadership Summit, I announced to the packed auditorium. Thank you all for coming. Applause thundered through the room as Sarah, Rachel, and Maria joined me on stage. What had started as our small support group had blossomed into a movement, drawing hundreds of female entrepreneurs seeking to protect themselves and their companies. Your story saved my company, a young CEO told me during the reception. I recognized the same patterns with my COO. Thanks to your workshop, I knew exactly what documents to check. Steve appeared at my elbow with champagne. The networking session's about to start. Ready? Almost. I checked my phone. A message from Hazel about tomorrow's board meeting. Our stock had finally recovered, and we were launching a new security software division, ironically inspired by everything we'd learned from Mark's schemes. Rebecca. A familiar voice made me turn. Presley stood there, holding a sleeping baby. I hope it's okay that we came. Little Hope had her mother's eyes, but thankfully none of Mark's features. How's Seattle? I asked, surprising myself by actually wanting to know. Good. I'm starting my own consulting firm. Small but honest. She shifted Hope to her other arm. I heard about Mark's sentencing. 15 years. I took a sip of champagne. Plus full restitution to all his victims. He deserves more. Probably, but I'm not thinking about him anymore. And it was true. The man who'd once occupied every corner of my life had become a cautionary tale, nothing more. Ladies, Maria called out, we need you for the panel discussion. The conference room had been transformed into an intimate setting where experienced entrepreneurs could mentor newcomers. As I took my seat, I spotted my mother in the audience, beaming with pride. Our first question, the moderator began, is for Rebecca. How do you balance protecting your company with maintaining trust in your partnerships? By remembering that trust isn't blind faith, I answered. It's earned through transparency, verified through diligence, and maintained through accountability. Sarah leaned into her microphone. And by building a network of women who have your back. Speaking of networks, Rachel added, we're announcing the launch of our investment fund, focused on women-led startups with strong governance structures. The room buzzed with excitement. This was why we'd organized the summit, not just to share war stories, but to create real change. During the break, Steve pulled me aside. Remember our conversation about timing? The one where you asked me out and I said I needed time? That's the one. He smiled. I was wondering if enough time has passed. I looked around the room, at the women sharing stories and strategies, at Presley teaching another new mother how to balance a baby and a laptop, at my mother deep in conversation with potential investors. You know what? I think it has. Dinner tomorrow? Make it tonight. I'm done putting my life on hold. The rest of the summit flew by in a blur of workshops and networking. As the last attendees filtered out, I found myself back on the main stage, gathering my notes. Quite a day, my mother said, joining me. Your father would have loved this. I keep thinking about what he always said about business, that it's not about being the biggest or strongest. It's about being the smartest and most prepared, she finished. And about lifting others as you climb. Hazel rushed in, tablet in hand. Sorry to interrupt, but you need to see this. The story just broke. The headline read, Tech Fraudsters Appeal Denied. Mark Ellis to serve full sentence. Good, my mother said firmly. There's more. Hazel scrolled down. 3 more victims came forward after the summit. The FBI's reopening investigations into his earlier ventures. I set the tablet down. Let someone else handle that chapter. We've got more important things to focus on. Like your date tonight? Hazel grinned. You told her? I asked my mother. Honey, everyone knows. Steve's been smiling like a fool all day. As if on cue, he appeared in the doorway, jacket slung over his shoulder. Ready to go? I looked around the empty auditorium one last time. This place represented everything I'd gained by losing what I thought I couldn't live without. Strength, purpose, community. You know what? I said, gathering my things. I really am. Because sometimes the best endings aren't about getting everything you thought you wanted. They're about discovering what you actually needed all along. And as I walked out with Steve, my mother's knowing smile following us, I realized I'd found exactly that. Not an ending at all, really. Just a better beginning.
In a quiet residential area on the outskirts of New York, golden leaves shimmered, heralding the arrival of autumn. Eleanor Brown, now 68, vividly remembered the events of about 40 years ago. Those days that significantly altered her life, the conflict with her mother-in-law, discord with her sister, and parting from her beloved father. From the large living room window, Eleanor watched her granddaughter Jessica playing in the garden. At 8 years old, Jessica strongly resembled a younger Eleanor. Long brown hair, intelligent eyes, and above all, a gentle nature that always considered others. Jessica, come here, Eleanor called to her granddaughter. Jessica stopped playing and ran to her grandmother. What is it, Grandma? As she gently wiped her granddaughter's sweaty forehead, Eleanor said, Shall I tell you about when I was about your age? Jessica sat next to her grandmother, eager with interest. Yes, I want to hear it. What were you like when you were young? Eleanor smiled. Yes, but this isn't just an old tale. It's our family history and a lesson in life. Eleanor took a deep breath and opened the doors to memories she had long sealed away. When I was 30 years old, on the Upper East Side of New York City, amid the hustle and bustle of the city, with its towering buildings, the Brown family's luxurious house maintained a quiet presence. At 30, Eleanor Brown was beginning to climb the ladder of success as a lawyer. Her father, George Brown, was 65 and had just retired as a history professor from Columbia University. Eleanor had a younger sister, Samantha, who was 4 years younger than her. Samantha was sociable and charming but lacked a sense of responsibility. She worked at an advertising agency but was more devoted to parties and dating than her job. Their mother, Caroline, doted on Samantha and often neglected Eleanor. Caroline, a housewife who valued her status in high society, expected her daughters to have good marriages. One autumn evening, the four of them were gathered around the Brown family dining table. Outside the window, the autumn leaves in Central Park shone beautifully. Caroline, excited, said, "Eleanor, you'll come to the garden party next month, won't you? The Rockefellers will be there too." Eleanor put down her fork and sighed. "Sorry, Mom, I have a deadline for an important case." Caroline frowned. "Well, that's too bad. Samantha will be there. She might meet some young men from the Rockefeller family." Eleanor felt a pang in her heart. Not receiving her mother's love was an old wound. "Work is important too, Mom." "Yes, but, Eleanor," Caroline admonished her, "you're already 30. It looks bad to still be single at your age." Samantha chuckled. "That's right, big sister. You won't attract anyone if you're all about work." Eleanor quietly cleared the plates. Only her father, George, looked at her with understanding. The next day, Eleanor and her father George went for a walk. The trees in Central Park were beginning to change color, signaling the arrival of autumn. "Dad, Eleanor searched for the right words. "I don't know if I can keep living together as a family." George gently embraced his daughter's shoulders. "Eleanor, you are a wonderful daughter. I am proud of you. Your mother and Samantha, well, they have their own values, but you should follow your own path." Eleanor teared up. "Thank you, Dad, but it's hard sometimes. Mom and Samantha don't understand me at all." George smiled gently. "Life is long, Eleanor. It might be tough now, but someday you'll understand each other. Until then, keep walking the path you believe in." Encouraged by her father's words, Eleanor was determined. "Understood, Dad. I'll do my best." From that day on, Eleanor devoted herself even more to her work. She decided to pursue her own dreams, not the expectations of her family. However, the rift with her family deepened day by day. Caroline grew increasingly upset about Eleanor's absence from social events, and Samantha continued to criticize her sister's way of living. Despite the family strife, Eleanor steadily built her career as a lawyer. She handled many cases defending the rights of the socially disadvantaged, gradually gaining the trust of her colleagues and clients. One day, Eleanor took on the defense of a whistleblower who accused a major corporation of wrongdoing. This case had the potential to significantly impact her career. Eleanor worked day and night, gathering evidence and devising strategies. Only her father, George, supported her silently through this. "Eleanor, don't overdo it," George said, looking at his daughter's tired face. Eleanor smiled. "It's okay, Dad. This is important work for me." On the other hand, Caroline and Samantha did not try to understand Eleanor's commitment to her work. Working again, Samantha said, with a sigh of disbelief, "Sis, are you enjoying your life?" Caroline agreed. "That's right, Eleanor. You won't meet anyone nice if you're always working." Eleanor sighed quietly. She had a secret she couldn't tell her family. In fact, she was engaged to a man named Michael Clark, a former college classmate who was then a pediatrician. However, Eleanor could not find the right moment to tell her family, fearing their reaction. She was particularly worried that Caroline might criticize Michael's family background or financial status. Meanwhile, Eleanor's whistleblower case made significant progress. Her efforts paid off and the corporate malfeasance was brought to light. This achievement became a major topic in the legal community, and Eleanor's reputation soared. However, she couldn't share this joy at home. Caroline and Samantha did not seem genuinely happy about Eleanor's success. Instead, they were rather cold. "Well, isn't that something?" Caroline said sarcastically. "But are you sure it's okay to become so famous? Will you be able to find a marriage partner?" While feeling sad, Eleanor remembered the encouraging words from her father, "Keep walking the path you believe in." Yes, this was the path she had chosen. In the spring of 2005, a tragedy struck the Brown family. George fell down the stairs at home, and severely injured his back. That day, Eleanor was in the middle of an important trial. Her cell phone was on silent mode, and she only noticed the multiple calls from her mother after the court session ended. "Mom, what's wrong?" Eleanor called back, feeling anxious. Caroline's voice was trembling. "Eleanor, I finally got through. It's terrible. Dad fell down the stairs. We're at the hospital now." Eleanor felt her blood run cold. "I understand. I'm coming right away." She rushed to the hospital. When she arrived at the hospital room, Caroline and Samantha were already there. George was conscious but grimacing in pain. The doctor's explanation was grim. "Mrs. Brown, his injury is serious. He has a complex fracture in his hip, and surgery is needed. It will take time for rehabilitation afterward." Caroline was distraught. "Oh, this is terrible. What are we going to do now?" Eleanor responded calmly. "Mom, I'll adjust my work. I'll take care of Dad." Samantha looked puzzled. "But sis, don't you have important work to do?" Eleanor stared at her sister. "Family is more important, Samantha." The surgery was successful, but George's recovery was slow. Eleanor managed her father's care in between work commitments. She worked at the office during the day and sometimes stayed overnight at the hospital. One day, when George woke up in the hospital room, Eleanor was by his side. "Eleanor," George called out in a weak voice. "Dad, are you okay? Do you need anything?" Eleanor asked gently. George smiled. "No, I don't need anything. I'm just glad you're here." Eleanor gripped her father's hand. "Of course, Dad. I'm here for you." George stared into his daughter's face. "Eleanor, you've really become strong, but I want you to take care of yourself too." Eleanor held back tears as she replied, "I know, Dad. I'll stay with you until you're better." Meanwhile, Caroline and Samantha seemed to avoid taking care of George. Even when they visited the hospital, they did not stay long and often left quickly. One day, Eleanor asked her mother and sister, "Hey, Samantha, I have an important business trip this weekend. Can you take care of Dad?" Samantha frowned. "Sorry, Eleanor. I have plans to go to the Hamptons with friends." Caroline also shook her head. "It's difficult for me too. I have a ladies' meeting." Eleanor was disappointed but not surprised. "I see," she said quietly. "Then, I guess I'll have to cancel the business trip." That night, Eleanor cried in her father's hospital room. George comforted his daughter with a weak voice. "Eleanor, you're doing enough. Don't blame yourself." Eleanor gripped her father's hand. "Dad, I'll do my best. I'll make sure you get better." As days passed, Eleanor struggled to balance her work and caring for her father. Her colleagues understood her situation and supported her as much as they could. However, time management was always a challenge for her as she handled major cases. One day, Eleanor unexpectedly met Michael in the hospital corridor. Michael called out, surprised. Eleanor smiled, though she looked tired. "Michael, what are you doing here?" Michael smiled gently. "I'm doing rounds in pediatrics. Are you here to take care of your dad?" Eleanor nodded. "Yes, that's right." Michael looked at her worriedly. "Are you okay? Are you not overdoing it?" Eleanor sighed deeply. "Honestly, it's tough. Work, caregiving, family issues, it's all piling up." Michael gently placed his hand on her shoulder. "Let me know if there's anything I can do to help. Let's get through this together." Eleanor felt immensely grateful. "Thank you, Michael. It's really comforting to have you here." Suddenly, hurried footsteps came from the nurse's station. "Ms. Brown," a nurse shouted. "Your father's condition has changed suddenly." Eleanor felt the blood drain from her face. She gave Michael a quick, apologetic look and immediately ran to her father's room. As she entered the room, doctors were bustling about. George was breathing painfully, and his complexion was poor. "Dad," Eleanor exclaimed. One of the doctors turned to her. "Ms. Brown, your father has developed acute pneumonia. We need to move him to the ICU immediately." Eleanor, shocked yet trying to remain composed, asked, "What should I do?" The doctor explained briefly. "For now, please leave it to us. Can you contact your family members?" Eleanor nodded and shakily took out her mobile phone. She was reluctant to contact Caroline and Samantha, but this was not the time for hesitation. "Mom," Eleanor said on the phone, "Dad's condition has suddenly worsened. Come to the hospital right away." Caroline's voice was full of surprise and anxiety. "Oh my, that's terrible. I'll come right away." She contacted Samantha similarly. Samantha's voice had a rare, serious tone. Hours later, the whole family gathered at the hospital. In front of the ICU, they listened to the doctor's explanation. "Ms. Brown," the doctor chose his words carefully, "your father's condition is stable now, but it is still critical. The next few days will be crucial." Caroline broke down crying, and Samantha was also in tears. Eleanor stood quietly but was internally assaulted by a storm of emotions. That night, Eleanor decided to stay at the hospital. Caroline and Samantha went home tired, but Eleanor wanted to be near her father. Late at night, in the silence in front of the ICU, Eleanor sat alone. Suddenly, she felt someone sit next to her. When she turned, it was Michael. "Michael," Eleanor said in a surprised voice. Michael smiled gently. "I thought you might be here alone." Eleanor felt overwhelmed with gratitude. "Thank you, really. Thank you." Michael quietly took Eleanor's hand. "Let's get through this together. I'm here for you." For the first time, Eleanor allowed herself to express her emotions freely. She buried her face in Michael's shoulder and began to cry quietly. Michael hugged her gently and stayed by her side without saying a word. That night, Eleanor confronted her own vulnerabilities, which she had long kept sealed away. For the first time, she truly accepted that she didn't need to carry everything on her own. The next morning, Eleanor received news that her father's condition had slightly improved. She sighed with relief as she looked out the window. The sunrise was beginning, signaling the start of a new day. Eleanor quietly vowed, "Dad, please get better. Let's all be happy together as a family again." At that moment, she felt the importance of family bonds more strongly than ever before. George's condition fluctuated. Though he was out of immediate danger, full recovery seemed far off. Eleanor visited the hospital daily and accompanied her father during his rehabilitation. One day, the doctor called Eleanor in. His expression was grave, and Eleanor felt anxious. "Ms. Brown, we have the results of your father's tests." The doctor chose his words carefully. "I'm sorry, but we found late-stage pancreatic cancer." Eleanor was speechless. "But my father just had a fracture." The doctor continued quietly. "It was discovered during tests for the fracture. It's quite advanced. Unfortunately, there's little hope for effective treatment." Eleanor felt a sense of despair. "How much time does he have?" she asked with a trembling voice. The doctor sighed deeply. "It's hard to say exactly, but probably between 6 months to a year." Eleanor, holding back tears, resolved to cherish the time left with her father. She decided to quit her job and devote herself to caring for her father. Her partner, Michael, understood her decision. "Eleanor, I understand how you feel," Michael said kindly. "Take the time you need. Your place is always open here." Eleanor was filled with gratitude. "Thank you, Michael. That really helps." However, Caroline and Samantha's reactions were cold. "Eleanor, are you crazy?" Samantha said in a dismayed tone. "To throw away your career like that." Caroline agreed. "That's right, Eleanor. What are you planning to do after Dad passes? How will you live?" Eleanor responded, suppressing her sadness and anger. "Mom, Dad's well-being is what's important right now. Don't worry about me." Though she had quit her job, Eleanor had Michael. She could afford to pause her career because of Michael's support. Yet, she still hadn't found the right moment to discuss this with her family. One day, while Eleanor was caring for George in the hospital room, he quietly opened his eyes. "Eleanor," George called out in a weak voice. "Dad, is something wrong?" Eleanor asked gently. George smiled faintly. "No, there's something I want to tell you." Eleanor leaned in. "What is it, Dad?" "About your fiancé. I know about him," George said slowly. Eleanor stared at her father in surprise. "What? How?" George gently held his daughter's hand. Eleanor, I like to think I know you well. Seeing you happy, I suspected there must be something. Eleanor, holding back tears, replied, I'm sorry, Dad. I didn't tell you. George smiled. There's no need to apologize. You had your reasons, didn't you? Was his name Michael? Can you tell me about him? Mixed with surprise and relief, Eleanor began to talk to her father about Michael, their meeting, how they understand each other, and their dreams for the future. The more she spoke, the brighter Eleanor's expression became. George listened intently to his daughter's story. I'm happy to see you so happy, he said. But why didn't you tell Mom and Samantha? After a brief silence, Eleanor quietly answered, I was afraid of how they would react. I thought they might make an issue of Michael's family background or wealth. George sighed deeply. I see. Certainly those two can be a bit biased in their thinking. But Eleanor, your happiness is what's most important. They'll come to understand that eventually. Encouraged by her father's words. Thank you, Dad. But I still need a little more time. George nodded. Understood. I trust your judgment. At that moment, George seemed to remember something. That's right, Eleanor. There's something I need to tell you. What is it, Dad? Eleanor leaned in. I've paid for your wedding and the down payment for your new apartment. George said that with a hint of pride. Eleanor was shocked. But, Dad? Seeing his daughter's reaction, George smiled. Surprised? Actually, I've been saving a little ever since you became a lawyer, for your future. Eleanor was at a loss for words. She felt a warmth in her chest from her father's deep affection. George continued, I want you to be happy. With Michael, you can be happy. I can see that. Eleanor, holding back tears, gripped her father's hand. Dad, thank you so much. But all that money. George said kindly, Don't worry about it. It's a gift from me for the start of your new life. Eleanor was so moved that she was speechless. She gently hugged her father. Dad, thank you so much. I will be happy, I promise. George smiled faintly. I'm glad to hear that. But Eleanor, there's one more thing I'd like to ask. Anything, Dad. Eleanor replied earnestly. George hesitated for a moment before speaking quietly. It's about your mother and Samantha. Could you forgive them? Eleanor stared at her father in surprise. But, Dad, George continued, they have their own circumstances, especially your mother. He chose his words carefully as he spoke. Actually, she had a tough time when she was young. Eleanor listened quietly. George's eyes narrowed as he recalled the past. Your mother's family was very strict. George began to explain. She was never allowed to pursue her own dreams and was always forced to meet the expectations of those around her. And, unknowingly, she directed that suffering towards you and your sister. For the first time, Eleanor learned about her mother's past and was struck by complex emotions. I never knew that. George continued. Samantha has also been strongly influenced by your mother. They don't understand the pain they've endured themselves. Eleanor thought deeply. Learning about her family's complex circumstances for the first time gave her a new perspective. George gently held his daughter's hand. I'm not asking you to understand them, but if there's a chance for reconciliation, I hope you'll cherish it. Family is irreplaceable, after all. Eleanor nodded slowly. I understand, Dad. I can't promise anything, but I'll try. George looked relieved. That's enough for me, Eleanor. I believe in you. From that day on, Eleanor cherished her time with her father even more. She brought Michael to the hospital room, and the three of them discussed their future plans together. George's eyes sparkled as he talked about the grandchildren he hoped to meet one day, wishing for Eleanor and Michael to build a happy home together. However, George's condition worsened day by day. Eleanor stayed by her father's side, cherishing their last moments together. On a quiet night, as Eleanor held her father's hand in the hospital room, George quietly opened his eyes. Eleanor. His voice was hoarse. I'm proud of you. Those were his last words. George Brown passed away quietly, watched over by his loving daughter. Eleanor wept bitterly. The grief of losing her father, her main support and sole understanding figure, was too profound to express in words. Michael rushed over and silently embraced Eleanor. In his warmth, Eleanor resolved to take a new step in life, carrying the memories of her father with her. George's funeral was a dignified and quiet affair, reflecting his character. Many of his students and colleagues attended, reminiscing about George's passion for academia and his personality. Eleanor spoke as the chief mourner. "My father loved his academics and his family. His teachings will continue to live on in our hearts." Caroline and Samantha seemed restless during the funeral. They checked their phones repeatedly and engaged in chatter with the attendees. Eleanor was pained by their behavior but remembered her father's words and suppressed her anger. After the funeral, when only the family remained, Caroline and Samantha made a shocking announcement to Eleanor. "Eleanor, about Dad's inheritance." Caroline stared at Eleanor with cold eyes. "Samantha and I will inherit everything." Eleanor was stunned. "What did you say?" Samantha added smugly. "There's a will, too. Look." She pulled out a document and thrust it in front of Eleanor. Eleanor took the will with trembling hands. It clearly stated that all the inheritance was to be left to Caroline and Samantha. However, Eleanor noticed that the signature was clearly different from her father's usual handwriting. "This is..." Eleanor began to speak carefully. "This isn't Dad's handwriting." Caroline's complexion changed. "What are you talking about?" "Of course, it's Dad's signature." Samantha started making excuses in a flurry. "Right after Dad was hospitalized, Mom and I went to his room and had him write it. He agreed right away not to leave anything to you, Eleanor." While holding back her anger, Eleanor then said, "Dad would never do such a thing. That's impossible." Caroline raised her voice. "Shut up, you can't leech off us." Samantha joined in. "That's right. You've been acting all high and mighty, taking care of Dad, but in the end, he liked us better than his boring, serious daughter." Eleanor was deeply hurt. However, she tried to remain calm. She remembered her last conversation with her father and took a deep breath. "Mom, Samantha," Eleanor said quietly, yet firmly. "If this is truly Dad's will, I will respect it, but I will have a lawyer verify if this is really his will." Caroline's face contorted. "There's no need for that. It's already decided." Samantha scoffed. "Yeah, it's too late for you to start scrambling for scraps now." Eleanor stood up quietly. "I understand. I can no longer live with you all. I'm leaving." Caroline said triumphantly. "That's right. Leave. And don't ever show your face again." Eleanor silently began to pack her things. The last shred of affection she had for her family disappeared. But she also remembered her father's words. "If there's a chance for reconciliation, cherish it." Before leaving the room, Eleanor turned and said, "This is how you treat Dad's memory. I can never forgive this. But..." She hesitated slightly, then continued, "I hope one day we can understand each other." Caroline and Samantha were momentarily taken aback. A fleeting look of regret seemed to cross their eyes. However, their expressions quickly turned cold again. "Leave and never come back," Caroline said at last. Eleanor silently opened the door and left her childhood home behind. The cold night wind struck her cheeks. She took a deep breath and stepped forward into her new life. A week had passed since Eleanor left her family home. She was staying at her fiancé Michael's apartment. Michael supported her gently and comforted her. "Eleanor, it's okay. I'm here for you," Michael said as he held her shoulder. Eleanor was filled with gratitude. "Thank you, Michael. I'm really glad you're here." Just then, Eleanor's cell phone rang. Looking at the screen, it was a call from her mother, Caroline. Eleanor hesitated but decided to answer the call. "Hello." From the other end, Caroline's shouting voice could be heard. "Eleanor, where did you put the money from your father's account?" Eleanor responded calmly. "What are you talking about, Mom? Don't play dumb. When I checked the account, almost all the money was gone." Caroline's voice was frantic. Eleanor sighed. "Mom, have you ever checked the balance before? Dad used it for my wedding and new home expenses." Over the phone, Caroline gasped. Eleanor continued. "Dad knew about my fiancés, and he spent the money for our new life together. That's..." Caroline's voice trembled. Then, the inheritance we were supposed to receive, is almost nothing, Eleanor said quietly. Besides the family home, that is. Caroline was speechless. After a moment of silence, Samantha's voice could be heard. Sis, you're joking, right? Samantha's voice was also shaky. What are we supposed to do now? Eleanor answered calmly. That's up to you. It has nothing to do with me. But, Eleanor. Samantha sounded like she was about to cry. I quit my job, thinking we could live off the inheritance. Eleanor then said sternly, you should take responsibility for your own actions. Caroline took the phone again. Eleanor, please help. We've already booked a trip and can't cancel it. Eleanor chuckled. You've already booked a trip just after the funeral. You weren't mourning Dad at all, were you? Caroline started to cry. I'm sorry, Eleanor. We were wrong. Please help us. Eleanor took a deep breath. Mom, Samantha, it's too late for apologies now, but let me say this. Dad was thinking of you until the end, and yet you. Over the phone, the sound of Caroline and Samantha sobbing could be heard. Eleanor continued. From now on, you'll have to live on your own. I no longer have a duty to help you. With that, Eleanor hung up the phone. Michael silently embraced her. Are you okay? Eleanor took a deep breath. Yes, I'm fine. I feel like everything is finally settled. Several months later, Eleanor and Michael started their new life in the new home. George had prepared for them. The wedding was small but heartfelt. On the day of the ceremony, Eleanor placed a photo of her father on the altar. Thank you, Dad. Your love supports me now. Meanwhile, Caroline and Samantha's lives changed drastically. Their lavish lifestyle was over, and they began to struggle with debt repayments. Samantha tried to return to her former company but was not accepted back, so she moved from one part-time job to another. Caroline also found herself searching for a job for the first time. Occasionally, Eleanor heard about their situations through acquaintances. Sometimes, a slight feeling of sympathy would arise in her heart, but no more than that. 5 years later, Eleanor was walking in the park with her husband, Michael. Hey, Michael, Eleanor said while holding her husband's hand. We are happy, aren't we? Michael smiled gently. Yes, really happy. Eleanor looked up at the sky. I feel like Dad is watching over us. Michael nodded. I'm sure he is. George always wanted nothing more than your happiness. At that moment, Eleanor's cell phone rang. It was an unknown number. Hello. Is this Eleanor? A hesitant voice came through. I'm Samantha's daughter. Eleanor was surprised. She didn't know her sister had a child. My mom is struggling. The girl's voice trembled. It's about money. But I can't do anything about it. Eleanor was momentarily at a loss for words. However, she quickly made up her mind. I understand. Eleanor said quietly. I'll see if there's anything I can do. After hanging up, Michael asked her, Are you okay? Who was that? Eleanor took a deep breath. It was Samantha's daughter. It seems that she and Mom are really in trouble. Michael then asked kindly, What do you want to do? Eleanor thought for a moment before answering. I can't completely forgive them, but I can't abandon them either. Dad would surely say that. Michael nodded. I support whatever decision you make. Eleanor looked up at the sky. Through the clouds, warm sunlight streamed down. Dad? Eleanor murmured in her heart. I haven't forgotten your teachings. Family bonds, even when hurt, are never completely severed. From that day on, Eleanor decided to gradually mend her relationship with her mother and Samantha. It would be a long journey. However, the love and tolerance passed down from her father, George, would guide her. In 2024, Eleanor was 68 years old. She had become a successful lawyer, helping many people. Now, beside her, was her 8-year-old granddaughter, Jessica. Grandma, what happened after that? Jessica looked at Eleanor with curious eyes. Eleanor smiled gently. Well, it took time, but we gradually mended our relationship. Grandma Samantha and Great-Grandma Caroline realized their mistakes and truly repented. Now we all get together as a family sometimes. Eleanor continued. Of course, it's not as close as it used to be, but we have managed to regain a sense of caring for each other." Jessica was moved, and she then said, "That's amazing, Grandma. I think forgiving is hard." Eleanor gently stroked her granddaughter's head. "Yes, Jessica, forgiving is really hard, but forgiving also makes your own heart lighter, and it creates a chance to build new relationships." Jessica listened intently. Eleanor continued, "But the most important thing is not to compromise your own values. Forgiving is different from losing yourself. That's what your great-great-grandfather, my dad, taught me." Eleanor looked out the window. In the garden, flowers of various colors were blooming. They were flowers she had planted with her mother and Samantha. Families can hurt each other sometimes, but they are still family. Eleanor said quietly, "What's important is to try to understand each other and not to forget about love." Jessica deeply engraved her grandmother's words in her heart. Eleanor stood up and took an album from the shelf. "Hey, Jessica, do you want to look at this album? It contains our family's history." Jessica sat next to her grandmother with curiosity. Eleanor slowly began to turn the pages. There were photos filled with joy, sadness, conflict, and reconciliation, a variety of emotions captured in family photographs. "Look, this is your great-grandfather." Eleanor pointed to a photo of George smiling. "His teachings still support our family today." Jessica stared intently at the photo. "Great-grandpa looks kind." Eleanor nodded. "Yes, he was a truly kind person, and he taught us the importance of family bonds." As she flipped through the album, Eleanor continued to tell her granddaughter about their family history. She shared everything, both the joys and the sorrows, without hiding anything. It was an important lesson she wanted to pass on to the next generation. At dusk, Eleanor and Jessica went out to the garden. The setting sun beautifully colored the sky. "Hey, Jessica," Eleanor said gently, "life has many challenges, but there's nothing we can't overcome. Believe in your family, believe in yourself, and cherish the people you love. That's the path to happiness." Jessica gripped her grandmother's hand. "I understand, Grandma. I will cherish my family too, and I want to be strong and kind like you." Eleanor hugged her granddaughter. Tears of joy and gratitude sparkled in her eyes. The wind gently enveloped them both. Eleanor felt as if she could sense her father George's warm gaze. "Thank you, Dad," Eleanor murmured in her heart. "Your last gift has brought happiness to our family." As the sun set and a new night began, Eleanor vowed to continue cherishing the bonds of family and to walk into the new days ahead. Children are a nuisance, so go to a facility. I don't have a mother anymore. My name is Elaine Gray. I'm still in the 5th grade of elementary school, and I live with my father and mother in a family of 3. My father is very warm and often takes me out on holidays. My mother acts normal when my father is around, but when he's not, she can be cold and hard to approach. I'm off. As usual, my father headed to work early in the morning. While eating breakfast, I called out, "Take care." Looking at the clock, it was almost time to go to school. I hurried to finish my breakfast and rushed to change my clothes. "Thank you for the meal." After finishing, I put the dishes in the sink and headed back to my room to change. Just a moment. My mother called me back, and when I turned around, she was pointing at the sink. "Who is going to wash these?" Her eyes were stern, and she seemed angry. Normally, I would just change and go to school, but I felt like I would be scolded if I did that. I'll wash them myself." When I said this in a small voice, my mother suddenly yelled, "What? I can't hear you." My body jolted. However, feeling that I was wrong, I apologized. "I'm sorry. I'll wash them myself." "Hoon." "That's right. From now on, take care of your own things." With anger, my mother threw her apron onto the sofa and went back to her room. Reflecting on her words, I realized that I need to manage things myself, so I cleaned up after breakfast and left the house. While talking with friends at school, the topic of parents came up. Listening to them, their mothers seem kind, and although they sometimes get angry, their relationships appear good. "What's your mom like, Elaine?" I was suddenly asked, and I hesitated on how to respond. However, I thought that maybe my perception of my mother being cold was a misunderstanding and that she was irritable because I had been neglecting my responsibilities, so I answered that she is very kind. My friends responded with, "That's nice, but I felt conflicted." When I got home and said, "I'm back," there was no sign of my mother. Thinking she might have gone shopping, I started my homework in my room. Before I knew it, it was completely dark outside, and the clock indicated it was dinner time, but my mother still hadn't returned. After a while, I heard noises at the entrance and sounds of something being moved and the fridge opening. When I peeked into the kitchen from my room's door, I saw my mother. Feeling hungry, I approached the kitchen and greeted her with, "Welcome back." "I'm back." From her brief reply without turning around, I could tell she was still in a bad mood. "What's for dinner tonight?" I asked with a smile, but it seemed to be a mistake. My mother turned around with a frightening expression. "What? Didn't I tell you to take care of your own things?" Your dad will be home soon, and I'm busy preparing dinner." Unable to say anything more, I reluctantly started to make instant noodles, just as my father came home. "I'm home." Hearing my father's voice, my mother immediately took the instant noodles I was holding. While I was disoriented by her actions, my father entered the kitchen. "Oh, are we just starting dinner now?" Seeing my gentle father's face, I felt tears welling up. "Welcome back." "Today, shopping took a bit long, so I'm about to start making dinner now. Daddy and Elaine, please wait a little longer." My mother's face softened. I wasn't sure if she was no longer angry, but the thought of eating the meal she was preparing made me feel happy. Later, we had dinner as a family and had a fun time playing games with my father. Maybe my mother was still a bit in a bad mood. As I fell asleep, I thought that if I properly took care of my own things, I wouldn't get scolded anymore. From the next day, I made an effort to manage my own affairs. I washed the dishes after breakfast, folded the laundry myself, and put it away in the closet. I cleaned my room, and on days when my mother was late, I prepared and ate instant noodles by myself. Hoping for a compliment from my mother, my face naturally brightened. Although she hasn't praised me yet, she has been getting angry less often. It's enjoyable to spend happy times with my father and the three of us as a family when he is home. One night, I woke up to groaning sounds and realized it was the middle of the night. Feeling scared and thinking it might be a ghost, I covered myself with my blanket. The groaning continued, and soon, trembling with fear, I heard the sound of an ambulance siren. The ambulance stopped very close to our house, and the front of the house became noisy. For the first time, I realized an ambulance had stopped in front of our house. I jumped out of bed in a panic and saw that it was my father being carried out by the paramedics. "Daddy," I cried out, seeing his face pale and in pain. Tears overflowing, I clung to a paramedic and pleaded, "Please save my dad." The paramedic gently placed a hand on my shoulder and said, "We'll take him to the hospital right away." Afterward, my mother and I followed in the ambulance to the hospital, and upon arrival, my father was quickly taken to the treatment room. All we could do was wait in the designated area. As we waited, anxiety dominated my mind, wondering what I would do if my father were to pass away. Next to me, my mother calmly operated her smartphone, showing no outward signs of worry. While shedding tears, I anxiously waited for someone to reassure me that everything would be all right. It's unclear how much time passed, but eventually, a doctor came to us. While my mother and the doctor discussed something complex, all I could understand was that a serious illness had been discovered in my father, and he would need to stay in the hospital for a while. Though the worst-case scenario might have been avoided, the fact that my father had to fight this illness pained my heart. I also had to accept the reality that he wouldn't be able to come home for some time. We decided to go home for the time being. My mother quickly prepared everything needed for my father's hospital stay and headed back to the hospital. Left alone at home, I lay in bed unable to sleep, and since I had come home early in the morning, it soon started to get light outside. I need to go to school. I knew I had to go to school, but my heart wasn't in it at all. I had no appetite and just lay still in bed. "Aren't you going to school?" It was noon by the time my mother noticed I hadn't gone. Although my mother didn't scold me for skipping school, she needed to visit the hospital and hurriedly left the house. Having not eaten anything since the morning, I headed to the kitchen. There was some rice left in the rice cooker and some leftovers from the previous night's dinner in the fridge, so I made a meal using those. In the evening, when my mother returned home, she had bought some sandwiches for me. "Eat this today. Also, I bought some instant noodles, so have those from tomorrow." "Okay, thank you." With my mother busy due to my father's situation, I decided to follow her instructions to not cause her any trouble. The next morning, I had instant noodles for breakfast and went to school. When my friends asked why I was absent the day before, I dodged the question by saying I was feeling unwell. The teacher seemed to understand my situation and spoke kindly to me. When I got home, my mother was not there, probably at the hospital with my father. Thinking about it, I started on my homework. I wanted to visit my father too, and planned to ask my mother if we could go together on the next holiday. While I was doing my homework, the phone rang, and since no one else was home, I decided to answer it. "Hello. Elaine, is that you? What are you doing?" It was my father on the other end, and hearing his voice made tears spill over. "Dad. Are you okay? I want to see you." As I cried, my father spoke kindly and with a smile in his voice. "I'm sorry for worrying you. There's no problem now. Dad wants to see you. I'd like you and Mom to come visit." Yeah. I'll talk to Mom about it." "That's good. Is Mom there with you?" I was a bit puzzled by my father's question. Mom wasn't at home, and I thought she might be at the hospital. "Mom isn't here. Maybe she's at the hospital." When I responded, it seemed like my father realized something and began to speak in a roundabout way. I see, that's right. I just got home a little while ago. I think she'll be back soon. Elaine, are you eating properly?" "Yeah, Mom bought some instant noodles for me, so I'm okay." After my reply, there was a brief silence from my father before he changed the subject with a simple "I see." After the conversation with my dad, I heard the front door open, signaling my mom's return. Dad had asked to speak with Mom, so I handed the phone to her when she got home. Mom seemed a bit shaken as she took the phone and talked with Dad. When Mom came home, I could smell tobacco on her, making me wonder where she had been before returning to her room. The next day, when I asked Mom if we could go to the hospital together, she made a complex expression but eventually agreed to take me. The reunion with my father had been a long time coming. He was connected to an IV, but as soon as he saw me, he showed a big smile. "Elaine, I'm so glad you came." I instinctively hugged my father, nearly crying at the sight of him looking so energetic, but I felt very happy. After enjoying a conversation with my father, I left the hospital room as it was time for my mother to return. As I looked back, my father was waving his hand with a smile, saying, "Come visit again." Little did I know that this would be our last conversation. Soon after, my father's condition suddenly worsened, and he passed away. I couldn't believe the reality and dressed in black as my mother instructed, attending the funeral. Many people gathered at the funeral to say their goodbyes to my father. My mother was composed throughout, and watching her, I almost hallucinated that my father was still alive. As I was standing absently in a corner of the venue, someone approached me. "Hey, aren't you Elaine?" Turning around, I saw a woman dressed rather flamboyantly standing there. Confused about who she was, the woman sat next to me and began to speak. "It's been a long time, hasn't it? I'm your aunt, your father's sister." Now that she mentioned it, I could see the resemblance to my father. I didn't know about my aunt, but I had heard my father mention his sister. "Aunt." "Yes, Aunt?" "Don't you think I look like your father?" she said with a laugh, and her face was indeed very much like my father's. At that moment, my aunt suddenly hugged me tightly. "It's okay to cry, Elaine. You've done well," she said, and without realizing it, my tears began to flow even more. It felt like I truly accepted the reality that I would never see my father again at that moment. After my aunt gently stroked my back and I calmed down a bit, I thanked her, and then went to get a drink. In the room, I found my mother, who coldly remarked upon seeing my tear-streaked face. "Were you crying? How disgraceful." Her cold words pierced my heart. "Mom, aren't you sad?" I asked, shocked that she seemed not to be grieving at all. "Being sad won't change anything. He's gone now," my mother answered coldly. Her cold words made my body start to tremble. Even though the three of us had always laughed and had fun when my father was around, I wondered if my mother had truly hated him. As I stood frozen, my aunt appeared. "Oh, sister-in-law, long time no see," my aunt said cheerfully, but my mother's expression immediately changed. "Oh, it's been a while." "Do you need any help?" my aunt asked, to which my mother replied, "No, there's nothing." Well then, Elaine, let's go over there," my aunt suggested. She took my hand and we left the room. I could tell from my mother's expression that she felt uncomfortable around my aunt. Afterward, I spent time by my aunt's side, and the funeral ended without incident. "Elaine, we're leaving now," my mother called me after the funeral. My aunt had held my hand throughout the funeral, but she let go when it was time to leave. Her expression was a bit sad. "Elaine, see you again." "Yeah, see you," I replied. As I followed my mother outside, an unfamiliar car was parked there. "Sorry to keep you waiting," my mother said as she opened the car door. An unfamiliar man was in the driver's seat, and I felt a resistance to getting into the car unconsciously. "Don't dawdle," "Get in quickly," my mother urged in a tone I had never heard from her before. Reluctantly, I got into the car, and it started driving in the opposite direction of our home. I continued to stare out the window. Not knowing where we were going, I felt a slight fear inside the car. "We're here. Get out quickly," I was told as I got out of the car, and there stood a large building, a place completely unfamiliar to me. "Mom, where are we?" I asked as my mother lit a cigarette. "Children are a nuisance, so go to a facility." Stunned, I could only utter a confused "A" as my mother and the man drove away in the car. I desperately chased after the car, but eventually tripped and failed to catch up, forcing me to give up the pursuit. As I was heading back to where I had been left, a car pulled up beside me. The window rolled down, and my aunt was sitting in the driver's seat. I never expected things to turn out like this. "Elaine, come on, get in." Relieved to see my aunt again, I quickly got into the car. She patted my head, and in response to her kindness, tears quietly started to flow. "How many times will you cry today? Poor thing." After driving for a while, we arrived at a house, which seemed to be my aunt's home. As we entered, a man's voice greeted us warmly with "Welcome back." I instinctively hid behind my aunt, but she laughed and reassured me, "It's okay." As I timidly looked at the person, a young man stood there, smiling warmly at me. "Surprised? Sorry about that. Actually, I'm this lady's husband. So, you can call me Uncle." He extended his hand with a friendly smile. Feeling reassured, I shook his hand, and he smiled again. "You must be hungry, right? Dinner is ready. You need to eat well and grow strong. You're as fussy as a mother." Their light-hearted banter made me laugh, and just then, my stomach growled. I blushed with embarrassment, and they both laughed even more. I was relieved to finally enjoy a fun dinner time, which I had missed for so long. After dinner, a bath was prepared, and pajamas were laid out for me to change into. When I went to the living room, my aunt had prepared some warm milk. "Hot milk, huh? Aren't you a bit too old for that? Right, Elaine? But don't elementary school kids like hot milk? No?" Their playful exchange was so comforting that I couldn't help but laugh along. Led by their laughter, they both began to laugh. "Sit down, I have something to talk about," my uncle said, and as I sat in front of the hot milk, he started speaking. "Hey Elaine, how about becoming our child?" he suddenly proposed, and since I was about to drink my milk, I choked. Cough, cough. "What?" I exclaimed in surprise. Sorry. That was sudden, wasn't it?" my uncle said as he patted my back. My aunt, watching this, laughed heartily. "Why don't you become our child? Do you really want to go back to your mother?" my aunt continued. Her words made me think deeply. I don't hate my mother, but considering the home situation, my father, and being left behind, the thought of returning to her is frightening. "Actually, we had talked to your father about this," my uncle revealed. "What?" Hearing my father's name, I was even more surprised. Then my aunt explained everything in detail. The man my mother was with was her affair partner, and my father knew about the affair. He was very worried about me. As his condition worsened, and he realized he might not have much time left, my father asked them to take care of me after he was gone. Hearing this, tears overflowed, and I desperately missed my father. "Your father loved you very much and cared deeply for you," my aunt said as she gently stroked me, her touch warm and comforting. I silently shouted words of thanks to my father over and over in my mind. I remembered my father, who always played with me and whom I dearly loved. I decided that from now on, I want to become stronger. I want to stay with you, Aunt and Uncle, I told them, and they were very pleased. Formal procedures are needed for us to officially become a family, and while these will take some time to complete, I was assured that I can stay with them without worry in the meantime. Wanting to be useful for my aunt and uncle, I decided to help with preparing breakfast and dinner and cleaning the bathroom and toilet. But my hard work only seemed to worry my aunt and uncle more. Elementary school kids should be playing more, they said, and though I was confused, I started my homework anyway. "Elaine, have you been doing housework all this time?" my aunt asked me at dinner. When I nodded, my uncle sitting next to me gently hugged me and said, "It must have been tough being just a grade schooler. Elementary school students can help out with chores. But I'm worried it looks like you're overdoing it." Indeed, I might have been excessively trying to earn my mother's praise without even realizing it. I fell silent, realizing this. The praise from my mother that I never received. I felt that my efforts might have meant little to her. "You don't need to worry about anything here. You can help out, but what's important is your friends, school, and taking care of yourself. We want you to cherish yourself." My aunt's words resonated deeply with me. My uncle nodded repeatedly, his eyes moist. I strongly felt how happy I was to be with my aunt and uncle. 2 weeks after my father's funeral, I was called to the teacher's room at school. Wondering what it was about, I was told that there was a phone call from my mother. The teacher shouldn't know much about my situation. Thinking that leaving the phone call unattended might trouble the teachers, I picked up the receiver with trembling hands. "Hello." "Elaine. Answer the phone quickly." The voice of my mother, which I hadn't heard in a long time, was shouting. "Where are you right now?" "I called the facility, and they said you aren't there." I choked up, unable to respond. "Are you listening to me? Well, never mind. I'm coming to pick you up because then I'll get the allowance. I need the money right now," my mother said. Hearing her words, I felt myself rapidly regaining composure. The thought of wanting to be loved or praised by someone who had betrayed my father was both frustrating and painful. Now I have my aunt and uncle by my side, and they are precious to me. My beloved father is also watching over me from somewhere. I can become stronger. I don't have a mother anymore. Before I realized it, those words had been directed at my mother. "What? What are you talking about?" my mother retorted. "Are you mistaken? Then, goodbye." Wait a minute before my mother could finish. I had hung up the phone. The teacher present was shocked and asked, "Was that really not your mother?" To which I responded, "That was a stranger." The call was treated as suspicious, and the school issued a caution. Worried that my mother might show up when I was leaving school, I used the school's public phone to contact my aunt. My aunt promised to come and pick me up right away and indeed showed up shortly thereafter. She explained the situation to the school teachers, who decided to contact Child Protective Services. After I got home, my mother did actually come to pick me up, but the teachers handled it, and she left in a bad mood. Although my mother didn't intrude on the school again, considering my safety, my aunt or uncle started picking me up when school ended. While I was grateful for my aunt and uncle's comfort, they encouraged me cheerfully not to worry. With the support of my aunt and uncle, I have been able to lead a happy life. The teachers at school are kind, and I feel supported by many people. One day, the home phone rang. Lately, I have been answering more calls at my aunt's house. As usual, I answered the phone cheerfully with "hello." However, the reply was a voice I did not want to hear. "Oh, isn't this Elaine? I thought you weren't at the facility, but you are there after all." As soon as I heard my mother's voice, I was startled. How did she know I was here? I hadn't told anyone. "Stop staying there and come back soon. Things are tough over here," my mother continued unilaterally. According to my mother, her affair partner's company had gone bankrupt, and she was financially in trouble. Despite hearing my mother's intentions, all I could perceive was her financial dependency on me, which became clear as she continued to plead over the phone. Previously, when she had called the school, she had voiced financial problems, indicating her dire economic situation. As I remained silent, my mother's anger escalated. Amidst her shouting, suddenly my aunt took the phone from me. I turned around to see her smiling, but her expression quickly turned to anger. "Just respond at least." "Are you even listening?" my mother yelled. "It's enough. I can hear you," my aunt responded firmly. My mother's voice trailed off over the phone. My heart was pounding during the confrontation. How can you not be ashamed? Telling your daughter to come back for money, that's no joke. What do you think Elaine is? My aunt confronted her. "It's none of your business. Elaine is my daughter. Give her back," my mother argued. "Why did you leave your daughter in front of a facility then?" "Stop making convenient arguments," my aunt retorted. "I'll call the police. I'll accuse you of kidnapping," my mother threatened. "Go ahead, say that. We have evidence of all the terrible things you've done to Elaine. We can share that too. We actually welcome the police. It would resolve things faster," my aunt said assertively. What my mother screamed, and I felt guilty, as if I was causing more trouble. At that moment, unnoticed by me, my uncle had returned and gently patted my shoulder. "It's okay. Leave it to us. This is a matter for adults to resolve." My uncle then took my hand and prepared more hot milk for me. "Elaine, you like hot milk, right? You drink it a lot." "Yes, it was so delicious the first time I tried it. I just loved it," I replied. Hearing this, my uncle smiled happily. After a while, my aunt came back into the living room and noticed my worried look, tousling my hair as she spoke. "What's with that face?" "There's nothing to worry about. We won't let her win." As I fixed my hair, I expressed my gratitude to them. Later, I helped with the dinner preparations. Living with my aunt and uncle made me realize how enjoyable housework could be. A few days later, another call came from my mother. My aunt and uncle had said there was no need to answer her calls anymore, but I wanted to be useful to them. "Elaine? Mom is really in trouble. Help me." "I've said this before, but I don't have a mother anymore." "How can you be so cold? I raised you. Have you forgotten the fun days with Dad?" The moment my mother mentioned Dad, my heart skipped a beat, but anger surged within me. Yes, it was really fun when Dad was around, but only he was kind. You abandoned me. I shouted louder than I expected, feeling a clear sense of relief as I expressed my feelings. After that, I confidently countered her words. "You are still my child, aren't you? I didn't abandon you. I just left you temporarily. You laughed and told me that children are a nuisance and to go to a facility. I can't think of someone like that as my mother." That was. I was forced to say that. It's not my fault. but you abandoned me. Therefore, I have no mother. If I have a mother, it's my aunt. My father is my uncle and my dad in heaven. You're brainwashed. Just come back without complaining." At that moment, I was arguing intensely with my mother while shedding tears. However, strangely, my heart felt lighter, as if I had released everything I had been holding back. Then at least tell them to let me live in their house. I can't even eat properly as it is. No, I won't let you disturb my loved ones. Suddenly, I felt a presence behind me and turned around to find my aunt and uncle standing there. My aunt patted my shoulder and praised me, saying, "Well done." My uncle, with tears in his eyes, nodded in agreement. Then, my aunt took over the phone and continued talking to my mother. Strangely, she seemed satisfied. My uncle expressed how happy he was that I called him Dad. Receiving his words of gratitude made me feel good about calling him that, and it seemed right to continue. After that, the contacts from my mother ceased. Perhaps it was also thanks to my aunt and uncle's support. Sometime after starting my new life, my aunt surprised me with my first smartphone. Having a smartphone for the first time was exciting, and it helped me stay in touch more frequently with friends, making my life even more enjoyable. One unusual day, amid the long, peaceful days, the house's landline rang. Since the situation with my mother, the school had been mostly contacting my aunt and uncle on their mobile phones, and I usually communicated with my friends through my new smartphone. Wondering who it could be, I answered the phone. "Hello." Contrary to my upbeat voice, a lethargic voice responded. Hello, it's me." At first, I didn't recognize who it was, thinking it might be a wrong number. Having been taught not to talk to strangers over the phone at school, I was about to hang up. "Wait, it's Mom. Have you forgotten my voice? Eh? Ah, now that you mention it." When she pointed out it was her, I listened more closely, and indeed, it was my mother's voice. It was noticeably weaker than before, making it initially hard to recognize. "You're going to be in 6th grade soon, huh?" There's no one here now." My mother started to cry at those words. As I was wondering what to do next, she spoke in a heavy tone. "The thing is, I'm in the hospital. I've gotten sick." I thought of my father, but without sadness instead. I felt grateful for all the good memories he had given me. As my mother pleaded for help with her medical expenses and care, I fell silent. "Say something. Why should I take care of a stranger like you?" I won't pay your hospital bills, and I won't ask my aunt to either." "Don't get too cocky." Her vigor was surprising for someone who claimed to be ill. Hearing about my mother's illness did not disturb me as it had when my father passed away. My feelings toward her had completely cooled off, and her words no longer instilled fear in me. I simply felt pity for her situation. I never imagined I could respond to my mother with such detachment, but I knew I never wanted to become like her when I grew up. Actually, I've received a new smartphone, and the home landline is hardly used, so it's going to be removed soon. This might really be our final goodbye. Watching her panic, I continued coldly. "Don't end things this way. Then, give me your smartphone number." "I cannot do that." "Isn't there anyone who will help me?" "There's no one to support me." "Then I'll make sure to contact someone who might look after you." Her voice briefly brightened at my words, but I sighed inwardly. Before hanging up, I obtained the name of the hospital and immediately contacted my aunt. When I reported this interaction to my aunt, she praised me for handling the situation on my own. "Can I ask you to handle any further contact?" I asked. My aunt readily agreed and promised to reach out to someone who could handle the situation. A few days later, I noticed the home phone ringing continuously. Assuming it was likely my mother, I deliberately chose not to answer. That night, the home phone kept ringing late into the evening, continuing even after my aunt and uncle returned home. When I informed my aunt that the phone was still ringing, she sighed and picked up the receiver. As expected, it was my mother on the other end, and a heated exchange began between her and my aunt. My mother persistently demanded to speak with me, but my aunt firmly refused. From the other end of the line, it was clear that my mother was infuriated that I had contacted her brother. Indeed, the person I had asked my aunt to contact was my mother's brother, my uncle, whom I remembered my mother disliked. My mother's brother is known for his stubbornness and deep sense of morality, and he would never tolerate my mother's misconduct. Upon hearing from my aunt, he was furious and promised to come immediately. The reunion between the siblings after several years ended disastrously, fueling my mother's anger towards us. Usually calm, my uncle prompted my aunt to hand him the phone when he saw the situation escalating. However, his expression sternly changed as soon as he took the call. "He gets even scarier than me when he's angry," my aunt whispered to me. "Oh, enough. If you want to talk that much, I'll come myself. I'll make you apologize in front of Elaine. Sick or not, it doesn't matter. Be prepared," my uncle shouted. After my uncle's outburst, my mother hung up in shock. "Oops," she hung up. After the call ended, my uncle was smiling as usual. It seems true that when a generally calm person gets angry, it is indeed frightening. Subsequently, my mother was forcibly taken to her brother's home. Her illness turned out to be milder than expected, and she was soon discharged from the hospital. Forced to live and work on her brother's farm, my mother, who had initially planned a lavish lifestyle with her lover, disliked farm work but had no choice but to toil under her brother's stern demands. Without the luxury to afford expensive brands anymore, she began wearing second-hand clothes donated by villagers. Meanwhile, the adoption process with my aunt and uncle was finalized, and I officially became their child. We celebrated with a big party where I laughed heartily. Surprisingly, we learned that next year, a new brother or sister would join our family, which made me incredibly happy and grateful. This experience reaffirmed my desire to cherish what it means to be a family. My name is Alyssa. Due to slight climate changes, our rural home has become more susceptible to insect infestation. As a result, I actively perform pest control every year, effectively becoming a hunter-like figure as a 34-year-old full-time housewife. Once fearful of insects, by the age of 30, I began to conduct extermination work without changing my expression. I think I have become quite tough. Today, I want to share an episode about how I dealt with my younger sister Emma, who had an affair with my husband, Scott. He was my childhood acquaintance, but our relationship blossomed a few years ago when I was still in my 20s. At that time, a middle school reunion was held after a long while, and I got reunited with him there. When we had just started elementary school, Emma, 2 years younger than me, Scott, and I used to play together. However, as we reached the age where it became embarrassing to play with girls, Scott began to distance himself from us. Scott's family moved away during middle school, making it even harder to keep in touch. Therefore, it was very tense for us to talk at the reunion. But something reliable exists when you grow up alcohol. Scott and I, both lovers of alcohol, enjoyed the reunion more than expected thanks to its help. After we had a drink for 3 rounds just by ourselves, Scott said something as we were about to part ways. "I've liked you since we were kids, and it seems those feelings have continued until now." I thought, what does that mean? But the conversation lightened, and he suggested, "Why don't we date?" So our relationship began. The next day, a sober Scott exclaimed, "Oh, I finally said it. How embarrassing. Am I being pretentious? What do you think? Is it selfish?" while rolling on the floor, and I burst into laughter. Though I felt sorry for him, seeing the person you like feel embarrassed is inexplicably fun. Afterward, things progressed quickly, and we decided to get married, visited both families, and informed them about the wedding plan for 6 months later and the start of us living together. We did that before the wedding to better understand each other's daily lives. Since we were originally childhood friends, our families knew each other well. There were no obstacles, and they gave us their blessings for our marriage smoothly. That's how it should have been, but something unexpected happened at home. During a meal with my family, Scott had come to visit. "Hello," said Emma after she came home from work. Upon seeing Scott at the table, her surprise quickly turned to joy. "Scott, why are you here?" Scott said, glancing at me shyly. "Actually, we've been dating for the past 6 months and are considering marriage. He came today to tell us about it." I decided to explain the situation to Emma, thinking it was my responsibility. At that moment, Emma's face contorted as if she was holding discomfort. "Wow. I'm tired. I'm going to sleep. See you later." She hurriedly went into her room and slammed the door shut. Oh, this is bad. I wondered if I had upset her and looked at Scott with a puzzled expression, but he reassured me with a smile. "It's okay." Just to clarify, Emma is not usually like that. She might be dissatisfied with our marriage and living arrangement. But why is she the only one feeling this way when our parents see no problem? Unable to grasp Emma's feelings, I debated whether to ask her directly after Scott left. As I was about to go to the bathroom, I encountered Emma in the hallway. "Oops." Lost for words, Emma glared at me angrily. "I can't believe you decided to marry Scott. I've liked him for a long time. I will never forgive you." Emma stormed off with heavy footsteps, leaving me in shock. At her sudden confession, I could only be astonished. Really? Did she like Scott? It felt like a drama unfolding, and I was overwhelmed. After a sleepless night, I came to a conclusion. Even if Emma likes my fiancé, why should it be a problem? Our marriage is already decided. If Scott had said he liked Emma, it would be a different story, but that's not the case. If she had feelings for him since childhood, she should have told him sooner. It's her own failure not to have expressed her feelings, and I shouldn't be blamed. I expected her backlash, but decided to handle it with the poise of an elder sister. In this heavy situation, I chose to think optimistically. However, I continued to struggle with whether to tell Scott. If Emma's feelings became known to him, it could cause problems. But if I didn't tell him, he might continue to feel uncomfortable every time he came to our house. Deciding it was his right to know, I explained everything to him. If there's trouble, seek help. There's only so much I can do. Scott reassured me. Sibling issues, huh? If Emma becomes aggressive, will you protect me? Of course not. Ha. With such light-hearted exchanges, we decided not to overthink things. We had no intention of reversing our decision to marry, and persuading Emma and gaining her understanding seemed unlikely. Ultimately, just letting it be was our decision. As expected, Emma's resistance intensified. The first day, she drained the bathtub water she had used first. No big deal, I'll just shower. But having my makeup and wallet hidden before work was quite stressful. I don't have the luxury to hunt for treasures in the morning. Desperately searching while nearly being late, I ended up rushing to work at the last minute twice a week, receiving sharp glances from my boss, as if I was neglecting my duties due to my upcoming marriage. This is unacceptable. As her older sister, I internally struggle with whether to forgive or not to forgive. Initially, our parents were unaware of my sister's pranks, but they realized something was amiss after some of my important items were hidden. There was even a scene where our mother scolded my sister, asking, "Why are you behaving so childishly?" On the other hand, my sister thought little of it, but the real problem was with our father. Shortly after my sister was born, when our mother fell ill, my father took care of her, which made him especially fond of my sister. In other words, through his parenting experience, he developed maternal feelings. I understand his feelings. It's natural to feel affectionate towards a daughter whom he had struggled to raise. An incident that made me feel he favored my sister was when I wanted to go to an amusement park as a child. My sister wanted to go to an aquarium instead, and my father ultimately decided we would go to the aquarium. At that time, my friends often said, "Your sister is loved more," so it kind of confirmed there was indeed a bias in affection. Since my mother respected our different opinions, she didn't have a big problem with my father's bias, but if she had been biased too, I might have suffered from a deep sense of inferiority. Perhaps it's my optimistic nature that allowed me to go through it well. I used to say things like, "If there's someone who can make me feel sad, I'd like to meet them." However, this time, my father clearly supported my sister. Apparently, my sister felt that her older sister stole her boyfriend, and my father blamed Scott as a heartless man who messed around with both of his daughters. As the older sister with a marriage already decided, I could understand why he would defend my younger sister who felt abandoned. My father's view was met with skepticism by my mother, who half doubted, "I can't see Scott doing such a thing," and when I insisted, "That's not true," she listened to both sides. Then, my mother judged us both fairly without blindly believing anyone's words. However, my father strongly said, "I can't forgive that heartless man who played with my precious daughters as if I was influenced by Scott." He completely ignored my attempts to explain. Although my father is a wonderful father who deeply loves us, this time I wish he would listen to me more. It's troublesome if there are more objections to the marriage, but I've decided to go against them and proceed. Effectively, that means moving up the schedule and starting to live with Scott immediately. If the problem is concentrated on my sister, the best course of action is to distance myself from her. If I leave the family home, her harassment should stop. That should solve the problem. As if to prove this choice was correct, our living together proceeded smoothly. Over time, my mother said, "Maybe you're right. You're an adult now, live as you see fit supporting me," and although my father had complaints, he said nothing more. Even if Scott and I were to break up, I doubted that Scott would choose my sister, as it seemed pitiful. I feel this was the smoothest way to handle the situation. It was hard for Scott to be in such an unfortunate situation, but since my sister stopped contacting us, I wondered if everything would finally settle down. Then came the day of the wedding. My sister ultimately did not attend, but my father suggested reconsidering, saying, "It's still not too late." My mother laughed and said, "I also thought I made a mistake several times after marrying your father. Marriage comes with various things." My father was clearly shocked to hear what she said. Although not everyone blessed us wholeheartedly, at the very least, we had our wedding under our parents' eyes. The next morning, the home doorbell wouldn't stop ringing. What? Scott and I jumped up in a panic, rushing to check the door monitor. Unbelievably, the whole family had come. Dad, Mom. "Emma, what's going on?" Before my surprise, Emma looked at me coldly. "I didn't tell you, but I'm pregnant with Scott's baby. I want him to take responsibility." That's the case. Fortunately, Alyssa has no children yet. Scott should take responsibility and marry Emma. Give Scott up. My mother, confused by my sister and father's suggestion, asked me, "What on earth is going on?" At that moment, Scott walked to the entrance, still dazed. What? My child, what?" He finally woke up and shook his head vigorously at me. "No, that's not true." It was a dramatic denial, like something out of a drama. I know. His panicking only makes it more suspicious, so stop that. I kept silent, holding back my laughter. What? Scott's child. How far along is the pregnancy? 2 months. If Scott doesn't take responsibility, this child will be fatherless. That would be too sad, right? 2 months. Shocked by my sister's words, Scott and I looked at each other. Ha 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 ha. Scott and I burst into laughter. Our parents were confused and unable to understand. Emma panicked. "Why are you laughing?" "Look, it's been 2 months, right?" Tears spilled from my eyes as I laughed too hard. "Emma, we've had some fun times recently, haven't we?" Yeah, sure." Emma was flustered by Scott's sudden question. Our parents, not understanding his words, gave him a cold stare. I was probably the only one who understood his intention in this situation. "By the way, Emma, do you remember how ripped my abs were?" Ha! Hee hee. Emma is dumbfounded. I'm struggling to contain my laughter. Do you remember how many abs I had 2 months ago when you checked? I seem to have misplaced them somewhere recently. It seems like only Scott would compare forgetting his abs to misplacing something. I laughed so hard, it was as if my abs were popping out. Scott, what do you mean by that? The answer is 0. I was about to agree, but Scott ignored Emma's suspicious look and seriously declared he had no abs. Even our mother couldn't help but laugh at this scene. It appears that the one who can make others laugh wins this game. Next question. You've seen my mole, right? How many do I have? What? Ha. Emma was confused about how to respond to Scott's strange question. Naturally, his real intention was to enjoy bewildering her in this situation. In reality, there's nothing physical between them, so she couldn't possibly answer his question. If she makes any mistake, it would be to Scott's advantage. Although simply denying knowledge would resolve it, Scott deliberately pressed for details, taking joy in her inability to answer. In fact, our mother also began to question whether their behavior really indicated a romantic relationship, as it seemed quite different. Naturally, such interactions would not be possible if they were truly intimate. It was a very embarrassing scene to have in front of parents. This very conversation serves as proof that nothing had happened. Scott was attempting to retaliate by confusing Emma. He looked innocently happy, like a child with a new toy. This man is terrifying. If you can't handle this kind of joke, living with Scott might be difficult, I thought, while watching Emma's reaction. Puzzled, Emma blurted out, maybe 10. Ah, too bad. The correct answer is that I don't know either. Even our father had to laugh at this. However, while hiding his laughter, he scolded, "Get serious, Scott. Stop confusing us." I had to hold back our father as he seemed ready to pounce on Scott. Wait, listen. Didn't she say she's 2 months pregnant? That calculation shows it can't be Scott's child. Really? What do you mean? Our mother asked, intrigued. Is it okay if I tell them I asked? And Scott reluctantly nodded. Wait, can I actually say it? Scott double-checked. It's okay, go ahead. Yeah, I'll say it. Taking his cue, he puffed out his chest and began, mother, father. To tell the truth, around that time, a very delicate part of me was stung by a bee. At his words, everyone around, including Emma, burst into laughter. Don't lie so much. There's no way such a place got stung. Our father was angry, while our mother clapped her hands, laughing. Actually, that's true. It was hot that day, and thinking no one could see me, I opened all the windows and was cooling off naked. Then, that bee suddenly. Scott was blushing from his face to his ears. Embarrassed to have made him share such a story in front of the family, I tried not to laugh, but I couldn't help myself. There's no way someone could be that embarrassed. Yes, there really is such a person right here. Scott objected to our father's words loudly, though it was not a story he was particularly proud of. Even so, that doesn't mean I can definitively say that my pregnancy isn't Scott's fault. Emma, regaining her stance as if to recover her position, restarted the argument. Think about it, Emma. It was a bee sting. Can you imagine? A crucial part. Dad, try to imagine. As a man, you must understand the pain. Emma was speechless at Scott's serious expression. Our father listened to Scott and unconsciously covered that part, looking down embarrassedly. His anxious expression gradually softened, seemingly coming to terms with Scott's words. It's a very important, delicate part for a man, so it was really troublesome. I had to call an ambulance. I was in the ambulance with him. I was even more embarrassed. Reacting to Scott's explanation, I couldn't help but respond. It was tough because he had a fever, and in such a condition. It's a bit of a peculiar hobby, isn't it? If there are any doubts, we could ask the hospital that helped us, Scott modestly suggested, causing our mother to burst into laughter. Scott, ever since you were little, you always wanted to take off your swimsuit when playing in the kiddie pool. Come on, show us the place where you were stung. While laughing heartily, our mother excitedly approached Scott. It's completely healed now, so there's no evidence. I can't show you something like that. Scott, for some reason, tried to escape from our mother, not covering the relevant part. It was clear from this scene that our mother completely trusted him. I, too, felt relieved. However, Scott seemed uneasy for a slightly different reason. Well, even from a man's perspective, it's not usual to lie about such an embarrassing thing, and it's clear without going to a doctor. At that moment, our father looked at Scott with a compassionate gaze, as if cherishing his slight dignity. It was a face I had never seen before. Ironically, the area that was attacked tends to elicit sympathy in certain situations. Does an injury prove advantageous even in such cases? In the midst of this, I spoke to my bewildered sister, Emma. Listen, even if such ridiculous lies are told, we're not getting a divorce. In fact, the only person who will end up more miserable is you. Even if you don't believe it, I truly wish for your happiness. After all, you're my only sister. At that moment, Emma's eyes widened dramatically. Shut up, shut up, shut up. I'm so done. I don't need a Scott who can only be yours. As Emma became emotional and tried to lash out at me, Scott forcefully brushed off her hand. I don't care what Emma thinks of me. I love Alyssa, and that's enough for me. Emma will continue to be a dear childhood friend and a sister-in-law, but I do not see her romantically. If you continue with these lies, I will respond firmly. As Alyssa's husband, it's my duty to protect her. Emotions heightened and tears nearly spilled. It's all over. I've never ever felt like the world was against me until today, said the person who wouldn't seem to have been in despair after a bee sting. At that moment, he seemed incredibly dependable. Watching this, our father said, if Emma is truly pregnant, I want to see medical records. This request clarified that our parents had merely believed the pregnancy based on words alone. Their kindness in believing their children seemed to have backfired this time. Our mother insisted to Emma, If you're lying, you should apologize." Trembling, Emma retorted, "I've reached my limit. No one is on my side. I won't apologize for anything," she screamed, tears streaming as she left. Dad attempted to follow her, but Mom stopped him. "Let her be for now. Let her calm down." What changed over the next 2 weeks? Our mother forcefully took a persistently claiming to be pregnant Emma to the gynecologist, but as expected, there were no signs of pregnancy. She was diagnosed as a healthy adult woman with no signs of illness. Subsequently, our parents apologized to Scott. "We're sorry for the unnecessary suspicion. We've known you for a long time and we should have trusted you, Scott. Please take good care of Alyssa." They also apologized to me for making me uncomfortable. Not having disclosed the extent of my estrangement with Emma, I didn't blame my parents. Parents believing in their children might be seen in various lights socially, but for a child, it's reassuring. They are irreplaceable to me. Humans make mistakes. This time, it was our father who did. Indulging Emma led to problems again, but considering the great debt I owe them, I chose to forgive them. Without my parents, I wouldn't have the happy life I lead now, nor might I have met Scott. After the truth about the fake pregnancy was revealed, Emma, embarrassed, stormed out saying, "I don't need a home like this anymore." Our father, who had been generous to Emma, had previously said, "It's better for her to have a cooling-off period away from home," and chose not to follow her. Our mother said sternly, "Such behavior can't just be excused as being carried away by romantic feelings. She must apologize when she returns. If she can't do that, she can't come back home." It's hard to imagine such an angry Emma apologizing to us. Mom agreed with this thought. This was effectively an exile from the family. 7 years later, Emma returned to the family home and apologized to us once, but eventually she was completely cut off. Despite her initially very sincere behavior, by the end of the year, excessive alcohol consumption led to serious trouble. The catalyst was her sneaking into Scott's blanket while he was asleep and provocatively asking, "Aren't you tired of your sister?" Scott, startled as if he'd seen a ghost, screamed loudly, causing a commotion among those nearby. The noise echoed through the house, waking not only me but also our parents. This commotion revealed the incident to the family. He wasn't a suspect to anything strange this time, but the drunken Emma exclaimed, "I'm so jealous of you always being close to your sister. Pay some attention to me too." Her demand was unrealistic, and I had no intention of complying. In response, I exploded in anger, yelling, "Stop it." Scott trembled like a small chihuahua, and our parents, angrier than ever, disowned Emma. Especially our father, despite his deep love for Emma, expressed his outrage. "I don't remember raising a child who behaves like this." I will never forget this shocking event. Once sober, Emma apologized repeatedly, but our father firmly refused, saying, "I can't believe you. The things you do when you are drunk reveal the truth." This resulted in Emma tearfully leaving the family home for good. After that, my life changed significantly, with my first pregnancy being confirmed by the end of the year. Since then, I have continued to have children, and am now a mother of 4 at 34. Our home includes a pair of twins among the children, and although I've only experienced childbirth 3 times, the house is always lively. In fact, nearly every year, new family members join, making our daily life as festive and fun as a festival. If left unattended, the walls quickly become like an art exhibition due to the kids' crayon drawings. Scott and I often move around the house busily with vacuum cleaners, especially on Sunday mornings. Sometimes the kids redraw on the walls we've just cleaned, but this too is a fun part of their creativity. Our youngest is currently in a bit of a rebellious phase, resisting dressing, brushing his teeth, and using the toilet. No clothes. I don't want to brush my teeth. I don't want to go to the toilet, he cries, which can be challenging, but every time I see the angelic sleeping faces of all 4, I instantly forget all these small disasters. Our parents, not just with the first grandchild but with each new one, pour deep love and often come to help with childcare, greatly relieving us. Scott is very cooperative in raising the kids, often giving them piggyback rides, but each time they pull on his hair, he worries about being bald in the future. Yet, thinking of the children, all these small hardships feel dear to me. Becoming bald is okay. With Scott's recent promotion and increased income, advanced hair loss treatment is an option if needed. I keep quiet about that, but seeing Scott worry about his thinning hair is somewhat amusing. Seeing various sides of the person you love is very interesting and enjoyable. It's one of the small joys between us. He he he. Ideally, people might prefer a quiet and calm house, but our home is the exact opposite. It's too noisy, but all that noise is a great source of happiness for me now.